Hello everybody, this is Mr. Rob and welcome back to another episode of the Washington Commanders franchise here on Madden NFL 24. We are on the other side now of the offseason. Free agency is over, the draft has concluded. If you did miss those episodes, I would recommend going and checking them out. Some big moves were made, not just on the Commanders, but around the NFL. So today it's our last stop before the preseason. Players have arrived for training camp, so we're going to take a look at the teams that I think can contend in the NFC, not just the Commanders, and kind of preview what the 2025 season may look like. So if you're excited for this one, make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. Now, obviously, we'll start off with our Washington Commanders, who finished last year 7-10, and we expect a lot more this year, as it's Eric Bieniemy now coming into his second year as head coach. Even though we finished under 500, there was a lot of good flashes, especially down the stretch. We just got off to such a slow start last year that it was just kind of hard to combat. Plus, we do play in a very, very tough division. Arguably, the NFC is the best in football. Now, let's take a look at this team real quick and kind of preview them as we go into preseason. Starting off with the quarterback position. For the third straight year, there will be a different starting quarterback on week 1. Last year's first rounder, Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington, will get the nod. He spent all of last year on the bench behind Kirk Cousins learning, and he will officially get a chance to start this year. Some people are debating how much he actually did learn on the bench, as maybe it did hinder his growth and development, but this is his team this year. We'll see how he does. Quick also little side note on Penix. I know he's a righty in this video. I've already gone and fixed it. He has been turned into left-handed, so I do have that corrected. Now, on the bench behind him is a familiar face. Jacoby Brissett, who spent last year with Minnesota and was our starter actually 2 years ago, has been brought back to the team on a one-year contract. He will help mentor Penix Jr. It is Penix's team, so he doesn't have to worry about Brissett fighting for his job in preseason. But it's just nice to have a veteran presence who knows the Bieniemy system to help him maybe coach through it. Now, at the other skill positions, halfback, we have a good two-headed monster there. Singletary and Gibson really showed out last year. Singletary was a great acquisition from the Baltimore Ravens in a trade, and him and Gibson will continue to split time back there in the backfield. As far as wide receivers, it's a lot of the same group. We did lose Curtis Samuel, though, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so he is not back. But I am excited to see what the younger receivers can do with more opportunities. Jahan Dotson is coming into a big contract year. His fifth-year option was not picked up, so he is a free agent after this season. And I'd like to see him take that next step. He has not passed 600 yards in each of his 3 seasons, and I'd like to see him break that jump if he wants a new contract. Then also Johnny Wilson, our third-round pick just from 2 years ago out of Florida State, a big 6'7" receiver. Played in limited snaps last year, but he showed out in some occasions, and he was very good at catching the contested catch. So I'm interested to see what Dotson and Wilson can do. We also drafted Sean Long out of UTSA in the 5th round, who has hidden development, so he is a potential wild card in that grouping, as well as Ricky Dockery out of the 7th round. And then we also signed a couple of veterans. Allen Robinson, we signed him before training camp. He is with the team on a one-year contract, a prove-it deal. He actually did not get picked up in free agency, and he put up 12 touchdowns last year. So, a guy that I want to see if he can make the team. I think Allen Robinson, even at his old age, could still make an impact. Tight end's a little bit not as solidified. We signed Mo Alley Cox last year before free agency, and he's kind of disappointed there. Eric Ali also had a good season for a 6th-round rookie, and then we drafted a tight end in our 3rd-round pick out in this year's draft. It was a pick at number 74, Noah Clancy, the tight end out of Oregon. It's basically an open competition there at tight end. Those 3 will compete into the preseason. Not sure who will get the nod, but I'd like to see better tight end play this year. Offensive line is going through a change as we signed Tyron Smith to a big 2-year contract, stole him away from our division rivals in the Dallas Cowboys. He will be there on that left side. I'm excited to see what he can do. Charles Leno was good last year, but, Smith is going to be an upgrade. No disrespect to Leno, but Tyron Smith can really help that left side for Michael Penix. Now, the other spots, left guard stayed the same, center stayed the same. Braden Daniels is going to get another shot at right guard after he played well to end the regular season. But right tackle is also a little bit of a question mark. Last year we had Sam Cosmi there. He left in free agency to the Green Bay Packers. And it's going to be Andrew Wiley, who's been on the team for a few years as a backup. He got a smaller contract this whole season. And he's got to prove it at right tackle. He's got to now protect Penix's blind side, considering he's a left-handed thrower. So if there's one spot on the offensive line I'm a little unsure about, it is at right tackle. On defense, the defense actually stays much of the same, and although their numbers were a little bit down last year, I'm not overly worried about that. Our defensive line, if I had to say, is the best in football. Jonathan Allen's coming off of an NFL Defensive Player of the Year season where he had over 50 tackles for a loss. Yes, 50. Chase Young had double-digit sacks. He's really taking that next level. Montez Sweat improved to a superstar, and then Deron Payne, who just continues to eat up blocks for the other three. That is going to be a scary front four. You can even see in this training camp video, there's a lot of them. And then on the linebacker trio, I like what we got. Trotter had a very good rookie year. He's solidified himself as the middle linebacker. I'm excited to have Drue Tranquill back. He missed a lot of last year with an injury. He is very familiar with Steve Spagnuolo's defensive scheme, so I'm hoping he can continue to hold on to that left outside linebacker spot, because I like Yamin Davis also at right outside linebacker. In the secondary, the trio at corners are two on the outside stay the same. It is Fuller and Emmanuel Forbes. Forbes had a very good sophomore season. I'd love to see him even take another step. And then Fuller has been as solid as they come on the other side of the field. Nickel, we do have another nickel corner that continues to be a revolving door, but it'll be Michael Davis this time. He signed a one-year contract in the offseason to be our starting nickel. And then in the safety section, it is Cameron Curl, who is still going to be the strong safety, and Jatavius Martin, who is the free safety. But we did spend our second-round pick on Richard Amos, and he will basically be the big nickel. We use a lot of big nickel sets against some of these teams with good tight ends like the Eagles and the Cowboys. So I think Richard Amos can definitely be that third safety out of Louisville this past year. I'm excited to see what he can do, and I do like where our defense stacks up. So I'm excited for this team, but we're obviously not the only team playing football this year. The NFC East is a stacked division. So let's take a look at the other teams now. Starting off with the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions, who finished last year 13-4. They were the hottest team. They're in football, no question. They might not have won the division, but they won so many straight games. They're led by Jalen Hurts, who had his best season as a starter with 4,000 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and he added 6 more rushing touchdowns for a total of 42. He's a top 5 quarterback in this league without question. At tight end, he has Dallas Goedert to throw at, 670 yards and 7 touchdowns. A little bit of a down year for him, but I'm interested to see what happens with the Eagles at wide receiver. In that category, it was a little bit of a disappointing year for them, despite the fact that Hurts threw for 4,000 yards. A.J. Brown has regressed. Devonta Smith had a 1,000-yard season, but he hasn't really broken out as a true number one. So we'll have to see what happens with the Eagles in that category. Defense, they're still rock solid. Jordan Davis wrecks havoc up the middle. He had 22 tackles for a loss last year. If it wasn't Allen's sensational season, he would have been the best in the NFL. And then Hassan Reddick, 13 tackles for a loss, 5.5 sacks. He's still out there causing havoc as well. Now, the Eagles did get a big loss in the secondary. After winning the Super Bowl, Darius Slay has decided to retire. So big play Slay leaves a hole there in the back end of that defense. They still have James Bradbury, so they still have some solid coverage skills, but they're obviously going to miss big play Slay. The other team to watch out for in the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys. They were the number 1 seed last year in the NFC with a 15-2 record. They lost in the NFC Championship to the aforementioned Super Bowl winning Eagles, and Mike McCarthy was able to get Coach of the Year. So this is still a very scary team. You just have to wonder, when is Dallas ever going to get past that hump? Prescott had a sensational season, 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Starting to put up MVP caliber performances, and he's got a great group around him. Tony Pollard at running back rushed for 20 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb caught almost 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns, but they did lose a couple pieces on that vaunted offensive side of the football. One, they lost both of their coordinators who accepted jobs in this offseason. And Brandon Cooks went to the Arizona Cardinals. And then Tyron Smith obviously left to come to the Washington Commanders. So a little bit of inexperience now on that offensive line. Zach Martin still anchors it, but it's a young group. So I'll have to see how they hold up in a full season here in the NFC East. Now the defense is still very stout. The defensive line, especially Micah Parsons, 2 years ago's NFL Defensive Player of the Year, still there. And DeMarcus Lawrence. The two of them last year combined for 28 tackles for a loss and 28.5 sacks. So it's going to be hard to stop that duo. And on the back end, you have Trayvon Diggs, who in his 5-year career has 25 career interceptions. So you can never count out the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the last team in the NFC East, you can't sleep on either. It's the New York Giants, another team that actually made the postseason last year. So 3 out of the 4 teams in the playoffs came from our division. Now, the Giants did finish 8-9, though. It was a very down year last year in the NFC. The AFC was by far and away the better conference. But the Giants, still a team you can't sleep on. Daniel Jones is still there. He's putting up Daniel Jones numbers, 3,000 yards last year, 21 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. And they still have Saquon Barkley, who just has to stay healthy. He only played in 11 games last year, missed a lot of time. Now, Will Shipley did do a good job in his rookie year of filling in for Barkley, so them two in the backfield can be a dangerous duo for Big Blue. But other than that, their skill positions leave a lot to be desired. Wide receiver is a very young and inexperienced group with Emmanuel Igbuka, last year's first-round pick there. But other than that, there's not much else behind him. On defense, it's anchored by Dexter Lawrence, who had 15 tackles for a loss last year. But other than him, again, just a little bit inexperienced, just a little bit underwhelming, I have to say, for the New York Giants. I would be very surprised if they make it back to another playoff appearance. Let's go to the rest of the NFC now. We'll go to the NFC North first, where there's actually a couple teams out there who caught my eye. The first one is the Green Bay Packers, a team that finished 8-9 last year and actually missed the playoffs. They lost that Week 18 winner-go-home game against the Minnesota Vikings. But they had a very interesting offseason, starting off with their big acquisition now at quarterback. It's Jared Goff, the 2016 number 1 overall pick, the former Detroit Lion division rival, who is now leading the Green Bay Packers. He signed a 3-year, $130.4 million contract in the offseason. So it's really up to him. They've moved on from Jordan Love. He's actually in Detroit as well as a backup to K Club Nick, funny enough. But Jared Goff, he's going to have to prove it. He didn't have the best season as a Detroit Lion last year, and he's got a lot less weapons this year in Green Bay. He does have Aaron Jones, and he does have Brock Bowers, are his 2 best. But, there's no Amon-Ra St. Brown to throw to. It'll be interesting to see how Jared Goff does with the Green Bay Packers. I do think the NFC North is a little weak outside of Green Bay and potentially the other team we'll talk about, but I'm not completely sold on Green Bay, but it'll just be interesting to see what they do. The other team I'd watch out for in the NFC North is the Minnesota Vikings. They did win the division last year at 9-8, but they lost in the division round 2 at the Philadelphia Eagles, and well, they're anchored by Bo Nix, who I will again fix his player model. So he will be ready by the time we play Minnesota. But he won the Rookie of the Year last year on the offensive side of the football. He was a Pro Bowler, and, well, he's now a superstar. 3,800 yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions for him in his rookie season. Obviously, he's got Justin Jefferson to throw to, who led the league in receptions with 116, and he had 1,230 yards and 7 touchdowns. So it helps when you have Jay Jettas there, as well as TJ Hawkinson. And Bo Nix has a very solid offensive line, so you can't sleep on the Purple People Eaters on their offensive side of the football, actually. Now on defense, though, they made the biggest signing in the offseason. Aaron Donald has left the Los Angeles Rams. He is now out here in Minnesota. Yes, he only had 8 sacks last year, but the 4-time Defensive Player of the Year will immediately boost the defensive line for the Minnesota Vikings, and will also help free up Danielle Hunter, who had 12 tackles for a loss last year. He's still a superstar. So there's still playmakers plenty in the Minnesota Vikings. Secondary is a little weak, but they get a little help in the linebacker department because Devin White, who they signed 2 offseasons ago, is still there, the fastest linebacker in football. So I do think Minnesota can win the NFC North. We'll just have to see who breaks out in that division this year. In the NFC South, this is, in my opinion, the weakest division in football. 3 out of the 4 teams had the 4 picks in the NFL draft. The only team that didn't was the Atlanta Falcons. They won last year's division at 9-8. They lost to, of course, Philly in the wild card round. So just, it all depends on Desmond Ridder. He's coming off his best year, though, where he threw for 3,600 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. But he is a free agent after this year, so we'll have to see if Atlanta commits to him after the 2025 season. Bijan Robinson, though, he's really broken out. 1,283 yards last year, 8 touchdowns. He's a superstar halfback, so that helps. And you do still have Keenan Allen, who signed a 3-year contract last offseason, but only played in 10 games. So you'd like to see him get a full season, but there's plenty of playmakers here in Atlanta. Kyle Pitts, the X-Factor tight end, is there. They also have Devin Duvernay, Drake London. They drafted Aaron Anderson in the first round, so there's plenty of weapons for Desmond Ridder this year. So if he really wants to prove he deserves a second contract, it's going to come down to those. Defensively, they're no slouch either. Bryce Huff broke out last year with 11 sacks. He's now a superstar development. Jesse Bates had 91 tackles last year and Atlanta. He's still kicking. And you have CJ Mosley, who you signed this offseason to be your middle linebacker. So Atlanta, they're still trying to hold on to the NFC South. I don't think they'll get much pushback in that division, honestly, but I'd like to see them do a little bit more than 9-8 this year. Lastly, though, we got to go out to the West, where San Francisco 49ers are my pick to win the NFC West. They are coming off a down year where they lost in the wild card round and only went 9-8. But they started off really slow last year, started to find their footing, and you just can't count these guys out. They went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They were unsuccessful against the Bills, but Brock Purdy is still out there. He didn't have the best season last year, but I'm expecting him to bounce back. You have plenty of playmakers on both sides of the football. Christian McCaffrey is still there. You got Deebo Samuel and company. Defense is still a key with Bosa and all those guys. So I wouldn't sleep on the San Francisco 49ers either. And I do think they'll bounce back and be one of the top teams in the NFC. Well, that'll do it for my NFC training camp. I hope you guys enjoyed the little preview. Next episode, I'll actually do one of the AFC and kind of give you guys a look at that conference. But I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. This is Mr. Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.